Okay, this is part 2 of chapter 10, lesson 3. We did number 7, part D last time. Number 7 is like number 15 that I assigned for homework. So I'm going to work just a couple more examples from number 7. Let's look at part F. Part F is 10x minus 15. Now remember what the problem says to do is to factor each of the following polynomials by factoring out the greatest common factor of its terms. So 10x minus 15, the first thing we're going to do is look at our coefficients. We have 10 and we have 15. What's the greatest common factor of 10 and 15? That's going to be 5. Now we look at our variables. Only one of the terms has a variable. That means the greatest common factor for our variable is going to be 1. So now I write my parentheses and I say, what do I multiply by 5 to get 10x? Well, 5 times 2x will give us 10x. Now, what do I multiply by 5 to get negative 15? That's going to be a negative 3. So our answer to part F is 5 times the quantity 2x minus 3. So we're going to work just a couple more parts from here. Part G says 32x minus 8y. Again, first we look at our coefficients. We have 32 and we have 8. The greatest common factor for 32 and 8 is going to be 8. Then we look at our variables. We have an x, but it's only in one of the terms. We have a y, but it's only in one of the terms. Since there is not a common variable, the common factor for our variable is 1. So now we look at our greatest common factor, which is 8, and we say, what do we multiply by 8 to get 32x? Well, 8 times 4 will give us 32, and we put an x in there to get the x. Now, what do we multiply by 8 to get negative 8y? We need a negative y. So 8 times the quantity 4x minus y is how we factor out 32x minus 8y. Now I'm going to go to a new page and do number 7k. This is x to the 4th minus 8x squared. So first we look at our coefficients. Our coefficients are an understood 1 and a negative 8. The greatest common factor between 1 and 8 is going to be 1. So then we look at our variables. We do have an x in each term. So we do have a common variable. We have an x to the 4th and we have an x squared. What's the least power? The least power that we have here is the second power. So x squared is going to be our greatest common factor. Now we say, what do we multiply by x squared to get x to the 4th? Well, x squared times x squared will give us x to the 4th. What do we multiply by x squared to get negative 8x squared? That's going to be a negative 8. So the way we factor this is x squared times x squared minus 8. One last part from number 7 is number 7 part L. We have x to the 4th plus y to the 4th. So first we look at our coefficients. Our coefficients are understood 1. So just 1 is all we have. Now we look at our variables. Does every term have an x variable? No. So there is no power of x, well, the 0th power of x. That is a common factor. Do we have y in every term? The answer to that is no. So we do not have a common power of y. So our greatest common factor for number 7 part L is 1. And then we say, what do we multiply by 1 to get x to the 4th? Well, 1 times x to the 4th will give us x to the 4th. What do we multiply by 1 to get y to the 4th? Well, that would be y to the 4th. So 1 times x to the 4th plus y to the 4th is how we factor x to the 4th plus y to the 4th. Okay, so that was number 7, which is just like number 15 that I assigned for homework. Now we're going to move on and look at number 8. Number 8 says, write each of the following polynomials as a monomial by first factoring out the greatest common factor of its terms. So we're going to work just a couple of examples here. We're going to look at number 8 part D, which says 2x cubed minus 5x cubed. Now you could just look straight at this and say, oh, both of these terms involve x cubed, So they are the same kind of term. We started with 2 of them and then we got rid of 5. So we must have -3 of these x cubed things. But the way that they ask for you to solve the problem is to factor out the greatest common factor of the terms. Well, first we look at our coefficients. What is our common factor of our coefficients? We have 2 and we have 5. The greatest common factor for that is 1. Now we look at our variables. Every term has an x in it. We have an x cubed and an x cubed, so our greatest common factor is x cubed. What do we multiply by x cubed to get 2x cubed? That would be 2. What do we multiply by x cubed to get -5x cubed? That would be -5. So what is x cubed times 2 minus 5? Well, 2 minus 5 is -3. And we're multiplying that by x cubed, so -3x cubed. So you can see we get the same answer either way. Now I'm going to work just one more part, which is part F. Part F is xy squared minus 9xy squared. What's our greatest common factor? That's actually going to be the xy squared because there's an x in each term and there's a y squared in each term. So what do we have to multiply that by? Well, xy squared times 1 will give us our xy squared. And xy squared times a -9 will give us -9xy squared. So in the parentheses, we have 1 minus 9. What is 1 minus 9? Well, that's -8. So what we have here is -8xy squared. So that was number 8, which is just like number 16 in the homework. We need to factor out our greatest common term, do the math on what's in the parentheses, and then get our final answer. Okay, so now we're going to look at number 9. Number 9 says, when the expression 57 times 64 plus 57 times 36 is written in factored form, it's easy to see that it equals 5700. Because when it's written in factored form, we have 57 times 64 plus 57 times 36. When we factor out our greatest common factor, which is 57, we get times 64 plus 36. Here's our 64, here's our 36. And 64 plus 36 is 100, so we have 57 times 100, which is 5700. So it turns this into a very easy problem. So let's do some examples from number 9. Number 9, part B, is 12 times 31 minus 12. Well, our greatest common factor here is obviously 12. What do we have to multiply by 12? Well, we've got, what do we have to multiply by 12 to get 12 times 31? Well, obviously that's 31. What do we have to multiply by 12 to get a -12? That's going to be a -1. So now we can do the math that's in the parentheses. We have a 12 on the outside, and then we have 31 minus 1 inside our parentheses. 31 minus 1 is 30. So what is 12 times 30? Well, 12 times 3 is going to be 36. Since it's 30, it's going to be 360. So now we're going to do part D, which says 99 squared plus 99. What is our greatest common factor here? Well, that's going to be 99. What do I have to multiply 99 by to get 99 squared? Well, that would be another 99. What do I have to multiply 99 by to get 99? That's going to be just a 1. So you can see that in the parentheses we have 99 plus 1. Outside the parentheses we have 99. So it's 99 times 100, which is 9900. Okay, so that was number 9, and that is just like number 17 that I assigned for homework. Okay, just a couple more sample problems. We're going to look at number 10. Number 10 says, what polynomial should erase the blank in each of the following equations? Okay, so we're going to work part C. Part C has 8x to the 6th plus 4x to the 4th minus 12x squared is equal to 4x squared times something, and we have to figure out what that something is. Well, what do we have to multiply by 4x squared to get 8x to the 6th? Well, 4 times 2 will give us 8, and x squared times x to the 4th will give us x to the 6th. Now we look at our second term. What do we have to multiply 4x squared by to get 4x to the 4th? Well, we already have our coefficient of 4 for both of these, so that stays the same. And then we have to do an x squared because 4x squared times x squared will be 4x to the 4th. Now we look at our last term, which is negative 12x squared. What do we have to multiply 4x squared by to get negative 12x squared? That would be a negative 3. So this is how we would work number 10, part C. Now let's look at number 10, part D. We have 10xy plus 2xy squared minus 2xy squared, and that all equals 2xy times something. So what do we multiply by 2xy to get 10xy? That would just be a 5. What do we multiply by 2xy to get 2xy squared? That would be just a y. What do we multiply by 2xy to get negative 2xy squared? Wait a minute, did I copy this right? I did not copy this right. Okay, let me get rid of this and start over on part D. Whoops, that did not start over. There we go. Okay, starting over on part D, what we have is 10xy plus 2x squared y minus 2xy squared. And our common term is 2xy. What do we multiply by 2xy to get 10xy? That would be 5. What do we multiply by 2xy to get 2x squared y? That would be just an x. What do I multiply by 2xy to get negative 2xy squared? That would be negative y, because we've already got the 2, we've already got the x, and then we have a single y. We don't have y squared. So that is how we write the 2xy times another factor to get 10xy plus 2x squared y minus 2xy squared. This is number 10, which is just like number 18 in your homework. Okay, one last example problem type to work, which is number 11. Number 11 says factor each of the following polynomials by factoring out the greatest common factor of its terms. Again, you guys are welcome to use the grid method, but you do not have to. For part A, we have 12x cubed minus 16x squared plus 8x. So the first thing we're going to look at is our coefficients. We have 12, we have 16, and we have 8. So 2 is a common term, but 4 is also a common term. So we have 4 times 3 makes 12, 4 times 4 makes 16, and 4 times 2 makes 8. There are no more common factors in our coefficients, so 4 is the greatest common factor for our coefficients. Now we look at our variables. Every term has some degree of x in it, so there is going to be an x here. What power is it going to have? We have an x to the third power, an x to the second power, and an x to the first power. We grab the lowest degree of x that we have, which is x to the first power, so 4x is our greatest common term. Sorry, our greatest common factor. 4x times what makes 12x cubed? That would be 3x squared. 4x times what is negative 16x squared? That would be negative 4x. And 4x times what equals a positive 8x? That would be plus 2. So 4x times 3x squared minus 4x plus 2 is how we factor out number 11, part A. I'm going to do I'll do one more part for you. Part C, we have 10x to the 10th minus, that's a minus x to the 5th. Our coefficients are 10 and 1, no common factor there. Now we look at our variables. We have an x in each term. Our lowest degree is x to the 5th. X to the 5th times 10x to the 5th will give us x to the 10th. And x to the 5th times negative 1 will give us a negative x to the 5th. So that is chapter 10, lesson 3, part 2.